Okay. All right. Happy Friday, July 23rd, 2021. Really interesting news. We're going to be talking about housing crash, housing bubble. Still a lot of people, if you look on Google, that's one of the most popular things that people are looking at. That's what they're searching. So we're going to be tackling that. We're going to be looking at what are some things we're seeing on the nationwide front. I'm going to share with you some of what my clients with coaching clients with the Tom Ferry organization are sharing from around the country, and also some stories and some things that we're hearing here locally in the villages in Florida, in Ocala, and the villages. So we're going to be talking about that today. So you better buckle up. There's a lot of information today. I've got several slides I'm going to be sharing. So we're going to jump into that in depth. I feel like there's a real need, and that's why I really started this YouTube channel here, is that there's a real need for information, for real information about what's really going on in real estate. So if you have questions about that, if you have questions about, okay, what's really happening, what do you think is going to happen, Glenn? What are you seeing from around the country? All these things, because there's a lot of misinformation and people will say things just to, clickbait and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's important to really have a upfront and honest filter as to what's going on here locally, especially here in the Villages, Florida. We're going to be talking about, there's a lady named Ivy Zellman who does a really great financial report. We're also going to see a report from the NAR, some of the top economists around the country. I'm going to share with you what they're saying and what they're indicating. So we're going to really get to the bottom of, are we seeing a housing bubble? Are we seeing a housing crash? Or will we see it? That type of thing. Because, ultimately what we've seen in the last, 7 months, just an incredible bull market in real estate, inventory dropping, demand rising incredibly so, a lot of it related to what we saw last year and just pent up demand. And now incredible demand this year, record numbers, record levels, as we've talked about in the past on previous videos. Give you the 7-day numbers. We're seeing 25 new properties hit the marketplace over the last 7 days. So that's Friday to Friday, 25 new properties. 50 have closed, 50 sold. So that goes back to, pending from, 30, 60 days ago. Lots of pending properties, under contract properties. And 42 new pendings going under contract over the last 7 days. We have seen a little bit of an uptick in inventory. So inventory right now in the villages, specifically 78 properties coming on, actually currently active on the market here in the villages. Ocala, we're seeing very similar numbers. The numbers are bigger in Ocala because it's just a bigger market, more homes obviously in Marion County and Ocala, but definitely an increase in inventory. Now it's interesting. I've had this conversation with several people around the country, and they hear, I don't want to spread fear. So I think I have to really tell people, okay, when we're seeing this bull market over the last 6-7 months, and people are saying, oh my gosh, prices are rising, and so people panic, and now we're seeing a little bit of prices aren't decreasing necessarily because the demand is there, but a little bit of an increase in inventory, right? Because we saw upper 40s here in the villages, lower 50s in that range just about a month ago. Now we're at 78. So we've seen a 50% increase in inventory, but that could be, a headline like 50% increase in inventory. And people might think, oh my gosh, inventory is rising. People are not buying anymore. No, and I'm going to tell you for sure, because I have my beat on this. It's not just my business, because actually I'm not in production. I work with all of our realtors here at Realty Executives, 80 plus realtors here, and a handful of others in Ocala as well. And I've got a beat on property management and rentals and what people are looking for. And I hear all the stories. I can tell you tons and tons of stories about what people are looking for on the rental side and the real estate side in Ocala and the villages. And ultimately, what I'm hearing is that demand is still pretty strong. So for instance, I'll give you an idea. We had a recent property in Cambria that was in the villages, patio villa that was for sale, $250,000. and we probably had about 15 showings over a 10-day period, right? Where in the past, maybe about 2 to 3 months ago, we might have had 40 showings. So less showings going on, but definitely now it's under contract, right? Like someone has bought it. We had 3 or 4 offers over the last 10 days, but the one that the bid that won it was the best bid. So it gives you an idea of what's going on. Still pretty strong demand, and I have to remind everybody, like, it is July. People are on vacation like crazy around the country. And I'm not that I've been on vacation, but I'm hearing a lot of people that have been on vacation saying it's like incredibly busy out there, whether it's the airports or their destination just loaded with cars and everybody's out there. And of course, you're probably seeing it on Facebook or on social media, or you're hearing about people being on vacation. So that's a big part of it. Also, I think buyer fatigue has generated with many people. And we're going to take a look at, what we're seeing there. Are we going to see, housing crash? Because now we've seen a little bit of a slowing down. Like we were going 300 miles per hour, and now we're going 275 miles per hour. So let's take a look at, we're going to start looking at some different slides here that I think will be helpful when we're trying to describe, okay, what's really going on in the marketplace. So let's take a look at that. So let's see. Here we go. This is one slide I want to share with you. So here are some, chief economists, what they're saying about what's happening around the country. Then I'm going to bring it down. I'm going to start with the macro, and then we're going to break it down and then look at, locally what that means. So, one particular economist, deputy chief economist at First American, title, it looks like existing inventory is starting to inch up, which is good news for our housing market, parched for more supply. We've talked about the low inventory levels, and there's reasons for that. And there's also big reasons as to the differences between, what we're seeing now and what we saw back in 2008. And I was a broker back then, and I sold, was involved in that marketplace. And that was a really, really tough marketplace. This is a different marketplace. And I think a lot of it has to do with lack of new construction around the country. Lack of, pretty much millennials not wanting to move. They've been renting. You guys can Google that and kind of look at that, look at those numbers for both new construction and also millennials. And what we're seeing is that, millennials are starting to buy. New construction has been, down around the country. So we're seeing an incredible demand with low supply. Hence, that the trickle down effect that's come here to Florida in Ocala and the Villages, that means that people are selling their homes faster and for more money. Another economist, we're seeing another significant week over week gain in inventory. That's what I've been doing for you guys here as well, is that there has been an increase in inventory here. I've been showing you that here, and we're also seeing that in the BLS as well. There's a little bit more inventory, right? Like we're talking about 10, 15, 20 more homes than what we saw about 4 weeks ago. So a lot of that, we're seeing a lot of that around the country, and there's various reasons for that. But we're going to continue to monitor that just in case we are, look, if inventory continues to grow at uncomfortable levels, that would be different. Just like we saw like in end of 2020, we started to see a little bit less inventory. Now we're seeing a little bit, we've gone all the way to the other side, lots of inventory to almost hardly any inventory. Now we're starting to swing this way, and we're going to pay attention to how far the pendulum swings. So really paying attention to that. And we'll talk about whether it's a good time to buy or sell or whatever. And of course, if you have questions about that, please let me know. Be happy to, this is actually live, so no editing here, by the way. And for the folks that are watching, obviously you know that. Supply is expected to improve, which will give buyers more options, right? This is from the chief economist at NAR, National Association of Realtors. Supply is expected to improve, which will give buyers more options and help tamp down record high asking prices for existing homes. So, with more supply, the expectation around the country is that buyers will have a little bit more options. We're recommending that, by the way, for the people that might have said time out. This is too frothy for me. It's too much competition. I don't want to compete. this might be a good time to actually get back into the marketplace because there's a little bit less competition. Perhaps we'll see more or less competition in the coming weeks. We don't know that. It's hard to say. But also, there is some evidence that this is going to be a short-lived market breathing for a second, right? Like I think that could very well be a possibility, but we'll definitely know when we get there. So supply is expected to improve, and the high, perhaps some sellers maybe coming down off of their pricing, and we're seeing a little bit of that, a little bit more price decreases in the marketplace. So this is something to really pay attention to nationwide, and I just gave you the lowdown on how that relates to the local market, right? So these are things that we really need to be paying attention to. And let's take a look at, here's another slide that we'll take a look at. And one thing we do need to pay attention to is on a weekly basis, obviously the new properties that are coming on the marketplace, but also some of the properties that are leaving the marketplace. So new properties and how much are leaving the market. Really important to take a look at that. So look at, this is an important slide when we're looking at, inventory levels, just to give you a little bit of perspective nationwide, then I'm going to bring it local. So looking at, okay, obviously 1999, super hot, low inventory levels here into the 2000s, of course. Then, of course, in 06, we saw inventories rise. And then obviously they're, obviously through the tough times, 2010 was actually the bottom of the marketplace. And, we won't talk about that here, but there's some evidence, some real evidence locally. That's exactly what happened. So lots of inventory here in these time periods here. This is from National Association of Realtors. And then 2010 started to decline a little bit with inventory. And this is probably, I want to say this is probably about 12, 13 period here. And then from there on in, inventory is dropping nationwide. So a little bit of increase. And then this is obviously with COVID, this is exactly what happened there nationwide. And then obviously a drop, a precipitous drop, is like falling off a cliff in inventory levels, right? And now we're starting to see an increase, right? A little bit of an increase in inventory there. And I think that's what we're seeing now. So the real key is, right, will this continue? Will this go like all the way here? And for us to see, this gives you a real idea, like this is where inventory would have to go to be, considered a housing crash. We got so much inventory and demand would have to disappear. But hard pressed to feel like demand is going to disappear when we've got a shortage of housing for people that and they're not renting anymore. So we've got more people in the world with less construction going on. So we'd have to really, really climb all the way up to here, which may happen. Who knows? Right? Like, who knows? Things happen. I don't see that happening. I see more of maybe somewhere around this mark, this kind of thing happening. So right here, this actually, look at this, neutral market, 6 to 7 months. Anything in this area, this range, which we've been here for a good 7, 8 years of being in a seller's marketplace, like quote unquote seller's marketplace. That's what we're seeing here, right? Right there. Seller's marketplace, buyer's marketplace. This is pretty much what we saw from 06 all the way through probably 11, 12, then finally switched over 13, 14, went into a seller's marketplace. Okay. So that's one way to know. And by the way, no matter where you are, no matter what market you're in, asking how many months supply, it's a good question to ask your listing agent. How many months supply of homes do we have right on the market right now? That's going to tell you a lot. That's going to tell you, how knowledgeable is your realtor, is your broker when you're trying to figure out who's the best broker in XYZ area. And, I'm obviously biased. I feel like we've got the best agents, the best broker, Realty executives in the Villages, of course. And, obviously the best agents, best realtors, I think, in the Villages and in Ocala. So just a little bit biased, just a little bit. So this gives you an idea of a little bit of an education there, which I think most people don't share. Most realtors don't know. So this is a little bit of education for you, for sure. Okay. So that's really, really important. And by the way, obviously, I was telling you about, we obviously do property management, rentals, and real estate. I'm not in production, meaning I don't sell. However, if you need to find, a great realtor, just you can call me anytime. And you can find me at 352-572-3796, 352-572-3796. So let's look at the next slide. Next slide is going to be this. Let's see, actually we covered that already. Sorry, I apologize for that. Let me share with you a different slide. Got a lot of slides here, so bear with me. I want to share with you what other people are saying and some other things that we're also seeing as well. So once again, if you have questions, you can connect with me there. Also, our website, getting a lot of traction on our website, buysellthevillages.com. And, for people that are looking to, if you're looking to buy, it's a good place to actually look around. We don't harass people and tell them that we don't force people to buy with us and that type of thing. But you can look through our site just to figure out, what's on the market, what's happening. Even if you're a couple of years out, we get a lot of people that are going to be 2 to 3 years out. Sometimes you want to buy now, sometimes you want to buy years down the road. You're going to retire. You can actually look at your own leisure. So I was telling you about the Zelman report, IB Zelman. This is a June broker report. This month's overall home buyer demand rating equaled 86 on a scale of 0 to 100, down from 88 last month and marking the first sequential decline since November. So obviously, just like we were talking about, it's so interesting that this is a national report, this nationwide macro level look. And when you're looking at that versus what we've seen here in the Villages, very similar. Like we've talked about this. I've shared this in past videos where, we saw, the run up, from COVID all the way through the year, November, December being the start of the run up. And it's been pretty crazy all the way through last month, all the way through June, and demand scale coming down a little bit. I'd say it's pretty much similar here. I think our local market is very similar. So a little bit of a slowdown in buyer demand. Okay, that helps you out a little bit. Okay, so that's one thing to look at. The other thing I want us to look at, we're going to look at a couple of probably 1 or 2 more slides that I think are going to be useful, because I feel like it's I think it's important for you to be educated. If you think about buying, you think about selling, it's just important to be educated through this whole process. Okay. Let's see, making sure, let's see if we've seen, okay, good. So we've got one more slide that I want to share with you. And of course, if you have questions, just let me know. You can actually put this in the chat on the side. You can let me know even after the fact. I get notified if you have a question. I get notified. Bear with me. I usually try to respond to any questions within a 24-hour period, but sometimes I miss things. But let me know if you do have questions. Also, please subscribe so you can be notified anytime I'm doing a video, and you also get notified anytime I'm doing an update, a market update. I usually do these on Fridays. I'm also doing some videos in between as well that are educating sellers and buyers. I try to be as really my heart and my dedication is to provide as much information. I feel like the public needs as much information so they can make educated decisions, all the time. I think that's really, really crucial. So I think really, really important to know that. So let's look at the one I want to share with you is this one. So we're going to share this particular slide here that talks about 4 different things that are going on right now. Okay. So the first thing that this is actually American home equity. And I'm bringing this up for a couple of reasons. One, I think it's important to look at this because a lot of people are thinking, okay, there's a housing crash. Now, let's keep in mind something that happened back in 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, that whole period. there was a lot of people that had equity in their homes. And by the way, the numbers, I don't have that exact slide here, but there's an equity difference between what people have in equity today versus what they had in equity back during that time period. And let's say '06, because that was kind of the beginning of the end, so to speak. So there was a difference there. The other thing that we know is that, especially being involved in real estate, I was actually in production back then, as well as being a broker. We saw everybody buy homes, and credit was loose. Credit is not nearly as loose today as it was back then. We also saw people take out a lot of home equity lines of credit. And basically, essentially, and you guys know this, everybody knows someone that did this, and you might have done this yourself. People were using their homes like a piggy bank. They were taking money out. And obviously, that proved to be the worst thing you could do. I'm not necessarily a big fan of doing that, by the way, but that's a different conversation, different discussion. Adam is asking, are you seeing folks going towards reverse mortgages for retirement homes in the villages? There's some of that. There's some. I'm going to tell you that give you an example. Like if we're selling, we typically sell about 100 to 150 sides, or not really homes, but different sides, meaning every home that sells, there's two sides. So probably an average of about 80 to 90 homes per month so far this year. And I would say that out of that, we're looking at maybe one or two. So the percentages are maybe 3 to 4% that are doing reverse mortgages for retirement homes. So it does exist. People can do it. We're not seeing a ton of that. We are seeing a lot of people go through financing, like a conventional financing, which is probably the best way to go. We've talked about VA loans in the past, which is possible, but you need to be prepared to have enough down so you can actually cover the appraisal if there's an appraisal issue. We've covered that in past videos. So, but with financing, we're seeing mostly conventional, and people that are using financing so they can hold on to their cash because interest rates are still so low, which is part of the perfect storm, right? Like interest rates being so low and demand being high, and also all the baby boomers that are retiring at record levels, and all the things that are happening around the country that are making Florida very attractive, and the villages in Ocala very attractive, because traditionally we're still one of the lowest price, even though people are like, oh my gosh, it's getting expensive. And I think relatively we're still one of the least expensive places in Florida. Like you can go to South Florida, you can go to Broward County, you go to Miami, you go to Fort Lauderdale, Palm Beach County, places on the coast, Orlando, Tampa. Still, they're pretty much more expensive than we are for the most part, right? There's probably going to be some circumstances where that's not the case, but if you look at average sales price, we typically one of the lowest areas in the country compared to what value you're getting, right? Even though there's some places around the country, obviously, that are going to be less expensive. I think for Florida, which is obviously a destination place, we're pretty inexpensive, relatively speaking. So so let's look at this. American home equity skyrocketed, right? This is a big deal here. So if we look at the first quadrant on the left, we're seeing average gain in equity of mortgaged homes. So for homes that have a mortgage, the average gain in equity over the last, a 12-month period, and this is coming from the American Community Survey CoreLogic 2021 Q1, quarter number one, first 3 months of 2021, over a 12-month period, there was a gain in equity in mortgaged homes of 33,000. Okay. So more separation, equity being the separation of what's owed to the value of property. Obviously, there's more value. Appreciation took hold. So one of the things we didn't see back in 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 is that kind of spread. In other words, once the prices plummeted, people were buying homes. Many, many millions and millions of people bought homes with 3% down or 0 down. So if there was let's say there was $50,000 in equity, but then all of a sudden you've got a complete drop in pricing where things go down by 100,000, then you're now underwater. So first of all, people were not putting enough skin in the game. Common complaint back then. Much better situation right now with how much skin is going in the game. Has this Delta variant been increasing the number of cases in the villages? Yes. So we're seeing more people. This is coming from Rock. We're seeing more people. Well, first of all, with most buyers putting more money down to begin with, you've got a larger number of people that will have equity, more than most, because this is a heavy, number one, it's a heavy cash community, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But it's also an area that people are putting significant amounts of money down anyway. And on top of it, we're seeing price increases here. So that delta has gotten bigger. So, but at the same time, I think we're also very fortunate, especially in the medium to lower price ranges. I think appreciation has taken hold, but it's not, I think it's bananas, but it could be worse. Like I'm hearing some other markets where like really, really crazy appreciation. Now, the caveat, the asterisk to that is we have seen a real significant, the big challenge in this marketplace is the home that has a view, this home that has privacy, one that's got a lake or retention pond, that kind of thing, golf course, frontage, those have gone straight through the roof. Very, very, I'm not saying hard to find, but definitely challenging. Many people are looking for that. That is available, but those prices have gone up significantly for sure. So one of the things I am recommending, by the way, for people that are out of the market, and we'll probably talk more about this in future videos, if you're out of the market and you are not seeing what you're looking for. In other words, like for instance, you're on our website, buy, sell the villages. This has happened a couple of times. You've done a search and now like, wait a second, Glenn, you're no longer sending us properties, or we're not seeing any properties. Well, we might have to adjust your search, meaning what was there before is no longer there. So we might have to, readjust the search, which is a really big deal. And that's why you're not seeing anything. It's not like we're not sending you anything. We just, guess what? The prices have gone up and they no longer, what you were looking for before doesn't necessarily exist. By the way, happening around the country, many places, not just here. We're not unique in that way. But that does tell me that, you might need to alter your search criteria. We're recommending to some people, if you're out of the market, to rent one of our homes, especially now. It's easier to rent something because we do have a lot of short-term rentals that are typically empty right now, that are completely booked during the season, January, February, March. But, they're available now to rent. So you might need 30 to 60-day rental. That's something to look at. You can call us up at 352-753-7500 if you need to rent a place. So for short term, that's available. Or, buy something that might be of lesser value. You might be looking for that $600,000 home, but you need to settle for 300 for now just to get here, be present, and then buy something that you're looking for and then sell this place. So a little bit more doable. We can get into that some other time. So second quadrant, let's look at the quadrant where 216,000 current average equity of mortgaged homes around the country. Current average equity, 216,000. So with that in mind, that tells us, okay, that's the average equity. It's not 50,000. It's not 25,000. It's 216,000. Now, something I think I do have to mention this because this says something else. This brings to mind something else, which is some people are thinking, wait a second, I know there's going to be a housing crash. We're definitely a housing bubble because there's been this whole forbearance thing. And I don't have the slides. I'm going to have to dig that up. The slides on forbearance, I've seen that before. And the forbearance slides basically say that there's not going to be as many people going into foreclosure because half the people that were in forbearance didn't need to go into forbearance, meaning they could have been paying their mortgage, but they were given the opportunity to not pay it, so they decided to take advantage of that. And the other half of the people that are now going to have to pay, mortgage companies are going to force people to pay, have equity. So guess what? They might have to sell. That means that there's going to be more properties on the market, but the numbers are not such that are going to overpower the current demand of homes. So we may see some more homes come on the market, not necessarily foreclosures, but people that do need to sell because they can no longer afford their home, but they do have equity, so they're going to sell their home. Okay. Let's go to the other quadrant. 38.2% of all homes are owned free and clear. This is nationwide. Once again, nationwide number. I don't have the local numbers, but I'll tell you this. What I do know is that in the past, we've seen at least 50% of the purchases, at least 50%, probably looking at about 55, 60% of the homes here in the Villages are owned free and clear. Or if they're not owned free and clear, I would say the 39% of the remaining properties, 60% cash, completely owned free and clear. 39% would be they've got financing. The equity would be pretty significant, and we're looking at low interest rates and people that are that are not necessarily working. Some are still, by the way, you can still work here. And you don't have to be 55 or older to live in the Villages, by the way. That's a misconception. You just can't have kids that are younger than 19 living with you. And they can stay for 2 weeks, but not longer than that, by the way. Just a little bit of a sidetrack. But to give you an idea, most homes are owned free and clear. And our number locally is going to be significantly higher than this. We're 60%, I would say, here in the Villages for sure. So that's another piece of security. It's a hedge against any kind of housing bubble. And by the way, when the housing bubble occurred back in 2006, that recession was caused by the housing bubble and the housing trouble. And all of that was caused because of the reasons that we talked about before, right? So let's look at increase in equity. Okay, totaling over $1.9 trillion, that increase in equity. That's what we're talking about here, right? That's how much more equity we've seen over the last, from Q1 2020 to Q1 2021. Okay, so I've mentioned a lot. We've talked about a lot here. There's a lot of things that we need to really look at. But I would say this, overall, we're going to see shifts. We're going to see moves. The way we're paying attention to the marketplace every single week sometimes can lead people to believe like, oh my gosh, this is happening. Oh my gosh, this is happening. I don't think there's any fear. I think fear is not a positive thing to live by. But I would say, if people were to ask, is this a great time to sell? I would say it is a good time to sell. It's possible it could get better, right? You could get more money perhaps down the road. But there's no certainty around that, right? I would say this is really a real positive time to sell because it's better than what it was earlier on. Obviously, if you don't need to sell, then don't sell. If you do need to sell, it is a good time to sell. I would say that. I would look at on the buyer side, is it a good time to buy? And I would say now is actually a better time than what it was probably about 3 weeks ago. It was like very challenging time to buy because so much competition, but there is still some challenges because inventory is still low, but we do know that inventory is a little bit better than what it was. So, just like anything else, I think timing anything is so difficult. And I think you always have to look at whether your lifestyle is it time for you to buy, then buy. If you're looking to move, if you're looking to move into our area, then move. If you're timing it and waiting until next year, well, interest rates will go up, the market may slow down a little bit, and maybe we'll get more inventory, maybe we won't, maybe there'll be less inventory because people are they're not wanting to move, whatever. We don't know that for sure. So just giving you an idea of what's going on in the marketplace. If you have questions, let me know about housing crash, housing bubble. Is this the wrong time to buy or sell? Be happy to address that. You can find me. Obviously, please subscribe here. That'd be great. On the Realty Executives in the Villages YouTube channel. Check us out if you need to look for property. buysellthevillages.com is a great place to find pretty much, by the way, not just the Villages, not just Ocala. That particular site, you can search from Gainesville all the way through Ocala and the Villages and Orlando and Tampa and Daytona and everything in between, like up and down. So lots of areas is what that particular MLS system will cover, right? So please, if you have a question about rentals, 352-753-7500, 352-753-7500. I'm Glenn Stein, Realty Executives broker, and hope everybody has a great weekend. Take care.